If I started e-mountain biking today, this is how I would make sure I bought the right bike, pick some of the right kit that's going to make your life more comfortable and more fun, and also how I would approach my riding to make sure I'm having a good time but also progressing my skill level at the same time. Right, you're going to need some kit, and starting off with a bike, this is going to be one of the most important choices you make. Right, it's a question we get asked all the time, what sort of bike is best? And it can be pretty confusing. You've got things like lightweight bikes, low power, mid power, full power, and you really want to narrow down the type of bike you want. So the best thing you can do is try some out. If you've got friends who've got e-mountain bikes already, that could be a great way. Or get to the bike shop, they can give you advice. Many of them have demo fleets as well, or even the direct-to-consumer brands have lots of demo fleets out there. So it's not that hard to actually get on a bike and try them out. You can even narrow your search down by deciding on what sort of motor you want. But the first thing you need to do before even all that is actually have to think about where you're going to ride the bike and what type of riding you like to do. Right, so from the type of trails that you want to ride, that's going to give you an idea of the type of bike you need. And in my opinion, the suspension travel and the geometry are probably the two most important parts of that. So a 170mm travel bike is going to descend rough trails really well, whereas a 150mm travel bike is going to be more nimble on the smoother trails. So you've got to think about the type of bike that fits the type of trails you ride. Simply put, anything up to 120mm of travel could be considered a cross-country bike. 120 up to 150, more of a trail bike. Anything above 150mm travel is definitely aimed at enduro and downhill riding. I think once you've narrowed that down, then you can decide on the brand of motor and the capacity of the battery you need, and also decide whether you could live with a bike with a non-removable battery, or if you think it's essential to be able to take the battery out to charge it inside without the bike. Many brands now sell their bikes direct to consumer, where you can buy them online, but it's a good idea to try them out first if possible. Or second-hand. I made a video recently and showed you can get really decent deals out there, and you don't necessarily need to be worried about buying a second-hand e-bike. Right, then it's time to get your bike, try it out on the trails, get used to how it rides. Every motor brand feels a bit different, so I tried the different power modes on it. Some can feel pretty punchy and have a lot of overrun, which means that when you stop pedaling, it'll want to push you along for a little bit. So that can catch you out if you're new to that bike. But you can use a bit of back brake sometimes just to slow the bike down, but get a feel for how it rides. And I actually think it's a good idea to go for a big ride on full power quite early on, so you can learn the range of your bike depending on what battery capacity you've got, and it changes for every rider depending on how heavy you are and conditions as well. But try and learn how much distance and how many meters you can get out of your bike. Crashing is an inevitable part of riding bikes, and injuries, they're inevitable. Might be a little bit much to say that, but if you know any of my history, if you've watched any EMBN or some of my more recent EMBN videos, then you know I probably had more than my fair share of injuries. But it's something I learned later on actually in my racing career, that if you do a bit of conditioning, a bit of work in the gym, it can really help you actually get over injuries but stop them in the first place. I would say if you're serious about riding your bike and you want to get faster, then definitely think about adding in some resistance training or a gym session once or twice a week. Like I said, particularly for me, I've had problems in my shoulders, and I find that if I can keep on top of them, it's going to help me when I hit the floor. There's less chance of doing damage, but also I find it can help me be stronger on the bike and actually use my skills a bit better as well. So I think it is pretty important to be in shape for riding. If I started riding again, would I approach the risk-taking side of it differently? I don't think so. I actually think that, when I raced downhill, I was pushing my riding on, trying to ride fast 30 weekends of a year. Yes, you fall off quite a lot, but you improve quite quickly as well. But I think for anyone who's looking to get better on a bike, then bike time is always the answer. And that's what e-bikes are great for, spending lots of time on your bike. So riding regularly is always going to make you improve. But even do something like an intense week of riding, if you're going on holiday somewhere or just taking a week off work, and riding 5 times a week, that will really speed up your improvement, just a lot of bike time. Helmets are certified, so it's not necessarily true to say the more money you spend, the safer it'll be, but you're likely to get more features. The helmets range from around £20 up to around 300. And I've got a couple of examples here from Met, our partner, just to show you some of those features you might get. So the first helmet is a Terra Nova open face helmet. It's got an orbital fit system there. It's got a visor that is movable, so it's really good compatibility with glasses and goggles. And this is a Met parachute, which is a convertible helmet, which I'll talk about in a second, but you can see some of the features. For example, it's got MIPS. So this is a rotational impact system, as you can see, that moves around inside the helmet. So it takes out some of that rotational force, lets your helmet slide independently from your head. Again, it's got one of these clicker systems. This is a BOA system on the back now as well. You might decide you want or need a full face helmet, so you can either go for a dedicated full face, or this parachute, like I said, is a convertible helmet. It's gonna be open face, or it has this clip-on chin guard as well. Full face helmets, obviously good for riding downhill, doing bigger jumps and drops, and they are compulsory in some bike parks. This helmet retails for around £100, but I found an offer for £27 online, whereas the convertible parachute retails for £300, but you can find these for £225. Okay, into the garage to talk you through some of the other lessons about kit I've maybe learned over the years and I wish I knew to begin with. Starting with shoes, trainers can be fine if you're riding flat pedals, particularly something like a skate shoe like Vans. If you look at the sole of that waffle sole, does offer pretty good grip on flat pedals. But what you find, especially these, are really floppy, so actually it's not a very nice solid platform to stand on. So a mountain bike shoe, again, you know, grip is the number one thing for me, but luckily nowadays on the market, you've got a really good choice of shoes that offer this sticky sole, so you've got really good grip on your pedals. I'm gonna use a couple of examples from Shimano, but they're really robust as well. I wouldn't say these are waterproof by any means, but they're really well sealed, really tough material on them. So I've hammered these shoes for ages. And they do keep my feet pretty dry, but also they last much longer than a pair of skate shoes will do. Getting into some more of the riding kit. So again, nowadays you've got a lot of choice out there. I love a riding trouser. I used to wear shorts full time. Now I wear trousers full time, even in the height of summer, because there's loads of these stretchy, super comfortable trousers. You know, I always ride with a phone for taking photos and stuff, but also for safety. So something with a decent set of pockets is really good. And then I always wear padded shorts. I know some people don't, but I just like the way they keep everything nice and tight, but also obviously they're super comfortable. There are many shorts and trousers that come with a lining short that is generally okay, but I find, maybe I've got expensive taste here, but if you do spend the money, so these are proper road padded shorts from a company called ASOS. They are quite expensive, I've got to say. I wore something expensive, about 150 quid, I think, at least. But they are so much better than the cheap liners that you get with other shorts and trousers that they make a massive world of difference. Obviously, maybe not on the shorter rides, but if you're spending a long time in the saddle, I feel like these are essential and it's money well spent. Again, if you're doing longer rides, then you definitely need to think about what you're taking with you. Backpacks are great. You can get some really nice versions, all different sizes. I do like the ones that kind of look like the trail runner vests that aren't very big, I've got to say. You can't fit that much in them. But my favourite, if I can get away with it, is a bum bag, or a hip pack, whatever you want to call it. This one's from Camelback, and you can fit 2 water bottles and a bladder and plenty of stuff in there. And then it keeps my back free. I find that on longer rides, you're obviously going to get sweaty probably, so it's quite nice to just not have something heavy on your back and have that just sort of carried on your waist. So definitely think that is a good option. When it comes to clipless pedals, obviously you need the shoes to match because you need to put the cleats in the bottom. So these are specific clipless pedal shoes. Again, a bit like anything else within the bike world, the more money you spend, the more features we get. So a couple of examples from Shimano. Again, you've got this, which is basically a lace-up trainer. It's exactly the same or very similar to their flat pedal shoe, but you've got the cleat in the bottom, as you can see. And then you've got the higher end, and you've got the BOA retention there, and you've got a Velcro strap, and you've got this sort of neoprene cuff there as well. Jazzier looking. But personally, I've got to say, you know, they vary massively in price. You get a set like this for sort of £50 upwards, and then, you know, a really advanced clip shoe could cost you £200. But actually, I don't mind the low end ones. I feel like I can get them tight enough with laces. They're not moving around on my feet. They're super comfortable, and they look a bit more casual as well. So when it comes to clipless pedals and their shoes, I've got to say, to go with them, I actually sometimes quite like the cheaper ones anyway. Right, wet weather kit. If you live somewhere like the UK and you want to ride all year round, obviously you're going to get wet. Something I've learned from the years of trying to stay dry and warm is actually, when it comes to socks, I don't mess around with waterproof socks anymore. All I do is I've got probably a dozen pairs of merino socks. So your feet are likely to get wet, depending on the shoes you wear. But even if they're wet, they stay nice and warm with merino socks. So I love these things. They are worth their weight in gold. They generally don't smell either. I obviously only wear them for one ride. I don't wear them for a couple of days in a row. But they stay nice, they last forever, and you keep your feet warm. However, I've got to say, you know, if you do get a proper set of winter shoes, and these have been a revelation, these are flat pedal shoes that are waterproof and have Gore-Tex. And this does make a difference. Yes, eventually they will get wet from down your leg, and once the water's in there, it won't come out. But for a lot of rides where it's wet but it's not crazy, these will keep your feet warm and dry. And a jacket as well. These are expensive if you want to go for a proper waterproof riding jacket. Gore-Tex, it's actually Gore-Tex Pro, which is the next level up, but they're brilliant, and they do last you a long time. If you're serious about riding all year round and you live somewhere wet, I think this is a brilliant investment. They can be expensive, sort of £200 plus, but probably worthwhile. I wear knee pads 99% of the time. Obviously, I feel like I'm quite sensitive to this. I've had surgery on both knees now, and whilst the knee pads wouldn't have stopped that from happening, because that was from twisting my foot, you know, I still feel like these really do protect you in crashes. And you know, it's only the most mellow rides. If I know I'm going out on a cross-country ride and there's going to be very low level of risk with it, then maybe I won't wear them. But a lot of these knee pads now, like these bluegrass ones, are really flexible. Once that knee pad warms up to your body temperature, it's really flexible, and you just forget you're wearing them. So that, for me, is the perfect knee pad that I will comfortably wear, you know, on almost every ride, because you just forget that I've got them on. Right, what about other upgrades? So the list is endless, of course, with bikes. You can do whatever you want to them, but I think there's probably half a dozen things I really like to have on my bike. Starting with comfort, I've got a bad wrist. That's another one of my injuries to add to that list. So I've gone from liking really narrow grip, so with a narrow diameter, to preferring a bigger grip. So there's more rubber on there, there's a bit more damping, but also your sort of grip is extended. Your fingers aren't quite as tightly wrapped around the bar. And I find that is better for me in the long run. You can still get grips that, you know, are shaped and still feel super comfortable, but a bit more rubber on them works for me. Personal choice, I think you need to find a saddle that works for you. Obviously the ergonomics of it, the shape that fits your rear end, and then you'll stick with that one for life. I've definitely found that. There's only, you know, 2 or 3 saddles I am truly comfortable with. Front mudguard, I love these things. They're so simple, so small, and I run one almost all year round because why not? They're just pretty simple. Same with tubeless. Obviously we talk about this. You know, I would not ride a bike with tubes anymore, just because with tubeless tyres, they very rarely go wrong, but they still do occasionally. So on longer rides, it's still worth carrying some sealant with you. But more important than that is a plug system and learn how to use it. So you have these little rubber noodles and one of these tools, and you basically can use that very sharp point and that bit there, sort of ream out the hole and then stick in one of these rubber noodles, and that will fix most tubeless tyres. So they are an essential thing to have, particularly if you're going for longer rides. And safety, I guess I've learned this, not the hard way, but I've done some pretty epic rides in my time and been some pretty wild places. And a lot of these bike computers or watches nowadays have this SOS function on there. So if you are in a problem, you can just hold the button down and it will send a message out to your contacts that you've put into your system. Obviously phones can do that as well. However, I once, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, I did a ride in Torridon with Blake. We were out and it felt like one of the wildest places I've ever been, and the weather was pretty mixed. And I thought about it long and hard then. I thought, if something goes wrong, we've got no phone signal, we're in the middle of nowhere. I know sometimes phones will use satellites as well. But that sort of prompted me to get one of these things. And this is a Garmin InReach, and this is a satellite communication device. So this one is the really small version. You can send out text messages. You can use this for navigation and for tracking you. And these things cost over £200, and you have to have a subscription as well. But I find that gives me peace of mind for those rides. If you're out by yourself, or if you are getting really remote, obviously you probably don't think about these things until it's too late. But I think that is a serious consideration to think about if you are going particularly wild places. When it comes to keeping track of your rides, which is something that I really like to do, just to see how far I've been, but also keep an eye on my training status, you've got lots of options out there, and I've used a lot of them. There's obviously bike computers like this, which are designed for exactly that job. You can stick them up on your handlebars. Great for navigating as well, because you can download your route onto this thing and it will give you a turn-by-turn navigation, so brilliant for that. And again, you can get into your training. If you wear a heart rate band, you can pair it to this. But actually, a lot of the watches nowadays, this is a Garmin Fenix 7, will do a lot of the same functions. I can connect this to my bike, to my heart rate monitor, power meters, all sorts of things. But there is a difference in price. So these computers start at around £300. This is the Garmin 840 Solar, so it is about £500 actually. But the solar charging means this thing will, help you navigate for days on end without having to charge a thing. Whereas this Fenix 7, it's not the latest watch, there is an 8, but it's still around £700. So they are expensive, I've got to say. There are cheaper versions out there with almost all the same functionality. So I'll definitely look into that. I've got to say, I use my watch 95% of the time, because I actually use this for my gym training, for keeping track of my steps, my general day-to-day life. And if I'm riding sort of, like I do most of the time, enduro, downhill style riding, then this can still connect to my bike and keep track of my rides without having to have something up on my bars. One final thing I do take with me, and it's a very sensible thing, but a first aid kit. I keep one of these in the van. I've actually got a bigger one than this, with a bit more serious kit in there if you do need it, like things for chest wounds, punctured lungs, things like that. I've got a friend who is a paramedic, so he's sort of given me some tips on what to do with that kit as well, and basically what you should have. I know it does seem sensible, but eventually you'll probably need one of these, even if it is for minor things like cuts and bruises. I think it's a great idea to have one with you. Like most of the time I ride from my van, so I keep that in the van, but this is a really nice little kit with a waterproof bag. So I actually do take this if we're going on big epic rides, middle of nowhere. I will take a really minor, but probably very useful first aid kit and stick it in my backpack. So nice and sensible way to finish the video. Let me know if there's any pieces of kit that you really swear by and you can recommend to other e-mountain bikers. Leave them down in the comments down below.